sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat, repeat the sounding joy. Woo! He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love.
Thank you guys for coming today, and we are talking about the Christmas miracle. And in the Christmas miracle, what we're moving, in the Course of Miracles, it says love is all that there is. And so the miracle is when we remove the blocks to love. So what are the blocks to love? There is this war. There is this war that's raging internally and externally. And because it's one, this war is the thing that lives within us, and we project it outward. And in this war, we see ourselves as separate from our brothers, and there's this hierarchy of love, where we have, people that we love that are special, and then we have people that we hate that are special. We go along this jagged journey until one day we get a call, and we come to a decision, a choice, a fork in the road. That begins with an approach to this internal manger. And we see ourselves moving into the manger, and there's a light coming from the manger. And we approach this manger, and we move past the kings and the shepherds and the drummer boys. And we see the Blessed Mother holding this baby, this child. And there's a light that's coming from this child that's so brilliant and so beautiful that we just need to move in closer. So to move in closer, we actually turn within. So I'm going to invite you to turn within for a moment, to close your eyes, to just breathe in the idea that you are in the manger, that you are seeing the Blessed Mother, that you are holding space for this birth. And now I'm going to invite you to keep your eyes closed as I walk you through the next part of this guided meditation. And in our mind's eye, I'm going to invite you to open your eyes as we look up and out from being held in the embrace of the Divine Mother. And as we look up and into her face, we see and are flooded with this unconditional love, like she's just staring down at you as if you were the all and everything that you are. And in her embrace, we feel this euphoric and angelic love that just swarms around us like a harmony. And we get to take a breath here. So just go ahead and take a breath right here where you're at. And let yourself drink up that love. And we get to ask, are we comfortable in this love? Could we get comfortable in this love? And with eyes closed, let yourself look out now from the manger. Look out from the manger and just get to see how your light is splashing across the faces of the figures in the manger. That you are that fire that they have gathered around. And you see their wise and weather faces looking back at you with so much earnest eyes that are shining back at you in so much love. Can you take a breath in that? Can you allow yourself to drink in and sink into the acceptance of that love? There is a light in you that cannot die, whose presence is so holy that the world is sanctified because of you. All things that live bring gifts to you and offer them in gratitude and gladness at your feet. The scent of flowers is their gift to you. The waves bow down before you, and the trees extend their arms to shield you from the heat and lay their leaves before you on the ground, that you may walk in softness, while the wind sinks to whisper round your holy head. You are the Christ. You are the Christ who comes to feed the world. This is the fork in the road. There are only two paths now. One of acceptance as we leave the manger, where we walk in extension of this love, and one in resistance. And we know the road of resistance quite well. Have you come to feed the world, to bring peace and harmony? Or will you draw back from your own Christ and walk away from the manger and leave yourself outside the manger in fear and in judgment and in war? Our eyes are the eyes through which Christ's vision sees a world redeemed from every thought of sin. Our ears are the ears that hear the voice of God proclaim the world is sinless. There's no need for war. Our minds are the minds that are joined together as we bless the world. And from the oneness that we have attained, we call to our brothers and we ask them to share our peace and consummate our joy. Consummate our joy. Oh, come, O you faithful, joyful, joyful, and triumphant. Come ye to Bethlehem. So you can take your time to move back into your body, back into our conversation. Merry Christmas. Bon Natale. I'm gonna mess up all of these. Feliz Navidad. And Will, can you help me out with the French version?
Joyeux Noël.
Joyeux Noël. Okay, thank you. In all languages, love is heard beneath the signs and symbols. In all languages, love is heard beneath the signs and symbols, and we're all saying the same thing. Come, consummate this joy with me on this day of birth. Come, consummate this joy with me on this day of light. Come, consummate this joy with me on this day of life. This, the holiest day of the year, the merriest of times, the most generous and most joyful moments in our calendar. Because we remember why, I don't know why, but we remember at this time of year, all of those who have impacted our lives, who have held the door open a little bit wider. And so we hold the door open a little bit wider and we let people into our hearts because it's Christmas. And Christmas is when we're supposed to break bread together, even and especially with that guy, the one that we want to leave outside the manger, the one that we don't want to break bread with. So I'm going to tell you two stories today. Most of you have already heard them before, maybe not in this order, maybe not in this way, but forgive me for repeating some of my favorite stories. One of them is about when I was growing up. And growing up, we had about 10 nativity sets. None of them were complete. Some of them were missing a Mary or a baby or a few kings. And so we kids had the idea of merging all of the sets, just combining them. And we would set up this long parade of figurines across our living room, our dining room. It went throughout the house, and they would make their journey to Christmas morning from one end of the house to the other end of the house. And the manger always lived above our fireplace. And we felt like, we needed even more people. And so we would let everyone join the parade to, the Christ birthday party. And so Batman got a place online, and so did Spider-Man and the Hulk, and of course, Barbie. We had lots of Barbies in a house of 6 little girls. We had a lot of Barbies. And so we had a parade of Barbies making their way to the birthday party, even though it might have been more harder for them to keep up in high heels and miniskirts. They did okay. And each day we would move to Christmas, my siblings and I would literally take the time to move them forward an inch or so to the manger. And they would all arrive on Christmas morning, circle around this little manger on our mantelpiece, witnessing this birth of light, this birth of Christ. No one got left behind. And no one had to prove themselves at the door, and everybody was worthy to join the good walk to God. And yet as a kid, I did find it kind of confusing, this baby in the manger, and who was he? And I couldn't understand how we could celebrate year after year the dang birth of this kid, and every year he still remained a baby. How was that possible? And also I had a really hard time connecting him with the guy on the cross. I had a hard time with the fact that for the rest of the year, we sat vigil to this man's death as he hung on the cross above the altar of our church for 365 days. We, in some ways, worshiped death because that's what it was put before us. Actually, as I did begin to connect him, it didn't make it easy to celebrate the birthday. Because when you're keenly aware of how he was going to spend the rest of eternity hanging in limbo on a cross, it makes it hard to celebrate that kind of a birthday. So the crucifixion was not just in the church, it was also in my home, and it hung around people's necks. And I wondered why. I didn't understand why we would do that. It made no sense to me. It still makes no sense to me. If you have one horrible, terrible, horrible day, and then in that day you come close to death, or maybe even in that day you like really wish you were dead. I've had some days like that. I'm sure you have too. I'm pretty sure that when you leave this big blue marble, that you will be horrified if you were remembered for that terrible, horrible day. And I know that we're supposed to honor all paths, but it's hard for me to lend my gaze to a broken Christ when I could be looking at the baby. But I'm willing to question it. Why do we stare at death? What does that get us? What does it get us from staring at death? What does it get us? Because it's not just in our churches and our homes, it's all over the TV. We have an addiction to death, an addiction to war. So what does it get us? Except maybe it gets us a degree of comfort with death and war and murder. And if that's the purpose, to help us to feel comfortable in death and war and murder, well done. We figured that one out. We're quite comfortable with that. In fact, when you talk about movie ratings, if you show a woman's breast, it moves it to like R. If you kill 1,000 people, it can still be PG-13. It's all good. It's just interesting what we value as unworthy of our gaze and corruptive to our soul. I remember when we used to meet in Emmanuel Hall, which was this cute little chapel. God, we were so blessed to have that. And there were images there of Jesus, holding a lamb, Jesus knocking at the door. And I used to say that the Jesus holding the lamb was the vegan Jesus, and the Jesus knocking at the door was the coming out Jesus. I still get a kick out of myself, apparently. So I was grateful and honored that we would find a home that celebrated the life of this teacher and a path, A Course in Miracles, that honors his teaching. And he teaches actually that there's no sin, that there's no death. That's part of the teaching, that we're all innocent, that he asks us to pray for our enemies. He doesn't ask us to kill our enemies. It's not in the manual. He asks us to be like little children, sinless and innocent children, to sit next to him in the manger and enjoy the vision of Christ's consciousness. He tells us that this and greater things shall you do. He tells us that you're just like me. You have everything you need to experience the Christ consciousness that dwells within you. So I think that we could find better symbols than a crucifixion to represent him. And what would it be like if we did? What would it be like instead of staring at crosses and wars and broken bodies? What would it be like if we laid our eyes 365 days on the innocence of a child? If we wore baby Jesus pictures around our necks and lockets and spent the year in adoration to the innocent face of a child in Bethlehem? What type of mindset would that encourage? There are some researchers in Cambridge that conducted an experiment with 36 parents and babies, and they actually measured the pattern of the brain activities. They compared the infant's brain activity to the adults when they were singing nursery rhymes to the infants. And the investigators discovered that the eye contact between these two triggered brain synchronicity, that their brain waves began to move in synchronicity and in harmony. When most people stare at a baby, you can see in their face like Christmas morning. Whereas in war, our brains are not synchronized. In war, our brains become damaged. We're not built for war. We end up with PTS. We end up with dull souls. So much is gained from the assumption of innocence, and so much is lost in the battle of blame and guilt. And I suppose that's why the story of the Christmas truce is so powerful for me. And hearing stories like this helps us all to have faith in our own ability to forgive and to forget and to forage for peace. Stories like this help us to build our faith and our potential. So the song is, "O come all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant, come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. Come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord." That's the song. In several accounts, that was the song that was credited as the catalyst for the miracle of the Christmas truce of 1914. And there are many different accounts to this story. Some say that it was, maybe the song was Silent Night. And I could see that, Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. And we're rounding around this beautiful infant, so tender and mild, as we join in community singing these love songs to this child. Sleep in heavenly peace. But it's hard because there were so many versions of the story. The large range of accounts, of oral accounts, of diary entries, of letters home that documented this event of the truce. I didn't know about this truce until I was an adult. They didn't teach me this in school, that men could put an end to war. This was not a story that I learned. I learned about all the wars, but I didn't learn about this moment of peace. So anyway, nobody in the accounts could really say how it started, but by all accounts, it started with a song. And as those Cambridge researchers found, singing is a way of synchronizing the brain waves. Can you imagine how stunning that must have sounded to hear that song, that synchronizing, that harmony that happens on the battlefield? So we can't be sure what the song was. Maybe it was a combination of all of the songs that were sung that night across the battlefield. And anyway, the song's not really that important because Christmas songs sung to celebrate the birth of Christ or Christ consciousness are all pretty riveting, when sung across a battlefield in the middle of a wintry night in the middle of war. Any of them have the potential to soothe the beast of battle and usher in peace, really. And you can't really listen to a Christmas carol without feeling a shift, right? So which holiday song it was isn't actually that important. Just the fact that it was a song sung, and that was the miracle. And it happened in the most unexpected place, again, on this cold and snowy night in the middle of war, where miracles are so unlikely and yet so very helpful. And it happened on Christmas Eve. All accounts agree on that. It happened on Christmas Eve. After a day of shooting and killing and warring, night came, the moon rose and shed light on what would be called the Christmas truce on Christmas Eve, which is notoriously fertile night for birthing miracles. And only 3 months after the war began is when this happened. Only 3 months after what would be called the Great War, which is crazy because the word great and war should never sit next to each other. Great war is the ultimate oxymoron. There's nothing great about war. Anybody can do it, obviously. We've proven that. There's nothing great about it. There's nothing great about death. There's nothing great about murder. The commandment says, "Thou shalt not kill." And Jesus takes it even further by saying, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." There's no place in the Bible where we have Jesus saying, "Stick it to them. Get out your bayonet and blow his brains out." Just, it's not there. You don't have to search for it. He says, pray for those who persecute you. There's no special clause except for when in war. Jesus didn't say that. When it comes to war, line them up and knock them down. Nope, not there. And yet, sadly, we go on enduring these great wars so ridiculously, so destructive, so unprofitable. So why? And maybe the reason is that we're immersed in a society that's fed on the news of war. Every once in a blue moon, you hear the story of peace, and maybe we need to romance the idea of peace the way that we have romanced the idea of war. We say that peace is the goal in A Course in Miracles, but if peace is the goal, we must begin to actively entertain peace. And when we think about this story, I invite you to summon to your mind all your own personal great wars. Like, let's just pull them out. Let's just dust them off. Let's just look at them. Where are you on the battlefield? Who and what are you wrestling with? Because it's not a light switch, it's a process that we have to walk our way gently out of hell and into the manger. So it was 1914, the whole world was at war. And we were 3 months into this quote unquote Great War, and Pope Benedict XIV had called a Christmas truce, but the idea was totally rejected. He issued an appeal to the leaders of Europe. He said that the guns may fall silent, at least upon the night the angels sang. Interesting that his invitation was also using the idea of song, the night the angels sang. Benedict hoped that there would be a truce to this war and that perhaps the powers that be would find their way to some sort of mitigation, some sort of negotiation. But, the powers that be were like, come on, a Christmas truce? How is that even supposed to happen, a Christmas truce? I mean, how can you take a day off from war? How could you orchestrate such a thing? And how could you trust your enemies to abide by the truth? It all seemed way too risky. So the command from the powers that be was no truce. And then here's where the miracle happened, because there was a truce. There was a grace period. In A Course in Miracles, it says, by grace I live, by grace I am released. And the men on the battlefield, they were looking for some great release, not some great war. A grace period is an extension of time that you don't earn or pay for. It's given from a higher power, lifting you from the fray of a battlefield of life. And these men had been groomed to follow these orders. So this is really interesting. These men had been formed and fashioned by fear to kill the enemy. That's what they were built for. And yet they took it upon themselves to initiate a truce. This truce was not issued by leadership, but by foot soldiers on the battlefield. And it started with the tentative rising of a Christmas tree and caroling from the German lines, followed by a similar response from the British. And it says that the German soldiers created signs, and the signs read, "You no fight, we no fight." And on one account, it said, soon after dark, we suggested that if they would send one man halfway between the trenches, 300 yards, we would do the same, and both agreed not to fire. It started with two men carrying a torch. When they met each other in the middle of the battlefield, they exchanged cigarettes and they lit up. How do you like them apples, right? Can you imagine being one of those men, man? I mean, they were already so brave to go to war, but now they were unarmed and walk into peace. I don't know if that doesn't make your knees rattle. I know that when I have been in a war with someone and I have to walk to peace, I'm scared because I'm afraid they're going to shoot me down. So these two guys, they get there and they light up. I don't know about you, but I think I would have needed a good cigarette at that point as well. So another personal account says the cheering on both sides was tremendous. Interesting. It makes me think of a sports event when everybody's cheering for their opposite teams. And this was a moment when they were both cheering for the same thing. And the account says, I shall never forget it. After a little while, several others went out, and a pal of mine met an officer who said that if we didn't shoot for 48 hours, they wouldn't either, and they were good to their word. And on Christmas Day, we were nearly all out of the trenches. It was almost impossible to describe the day, but I can tell you, we all enjoyed the peaceful time. It's a miracle. These men swapping cigarettes and food and helping each other bury the dead and shaking hands and singing carols together, drinking beer, exchanging souvenirs, including helmets and belt buckles and cigarettes, and even playing a soccer game in some accounts where the Germans won 3-2. And we don't really know if there was beer or soccer. That seems like a little bit of an exaggeration, which as an Irish woman, I don't mind whatsoever. I love a good exaggeration to extend a good story. But what we don't know about is the details, but there's so many accounts. There's so many accounts about this truce and that there was singing. That first the Germans would sing one of their carols and then we would sing one of ours until we started up, "O come all ye faithful." The Germans immediately jumped in, singing it with us in the Latin words. And in this account, he says, and I thought, well, this is really something extraordinary. Two nations were both singing the same carol in the middle of a war. So how did a war and how did war get to be so popular? When I was in Medjugorje, I had the opportunity to pray with many people from across the nation in the middle of the night on the top of a mountaintop. It was something that I will never forget. I remember looking around at this group of people from all over the world saying the rosary together. And I remember thinking to myself, this is peace. Remember this. This is what world peace would feel like. It's so rare and so wonderful to have this glimpse of peace. So in regards to the truths on this day, historians continue to disagree over the specifics, and they don't know where it began, but it was this jubilant zeitgeist that just took over and ran its way through the trenches. And it's estimated that 2/3 of the troops, that's 100,000 people, are believed to have participated in this legendary truce, and that it lasted the whole night throughout Christmas Day. Over the course of the day, the men got together in no man's land. These faithful men were joyful and triumphant until Christmas was over. No man's land. That's what they call the middle of the field. And then in no man's land, war picked back up again and continued for 3 more Christmases, ending just shy of the 4th and killing 60 million people. This is war. This is diverse, devastating, destructive, demoralizing, unprecedented slaughtering of life. This is war. And as we got to see, it took very little to turn a battlefield into a holy ground. And it takes even less time if you know the principles of miracles. And the principles of miracles is that miracles mean life. Is life happening? Miracles mean supplying a lack. Are we supplying a lack? Miracles means blessing both the giver and the receiver. Miracles is that acceptance of that inner Christ light. A miracle is when one who temporarily has more gives to one who temporarily has less. A miracle is an extension of love that requires no sacrifice. No one was sacrificed that night. When I was in Russia, in Yugoslavia, I went after that to Russia, I met this man who was a photographer. I met him on the street, and he wanted to buy some film from me. And when I gave him several rolls of film, I just gave them to him, he began to weep. And he took his watch off of his wrist and he pressed it into my palm. And he said to me, tell the Americans that we love them. It was in 1990. Tell the Americans that we love them. That's what he said to me. That was what he wanted me to deliver back to my homeland. And I felt to myself, I can't accept this watch from this man. This man, he told me, he said, I have killed men in this watch because this was a watch that was issued to me because I was in the army. And I have killed men in this, and he wanted me to have it. And I said to my friend Victor, like, I can't accept this. And he said, Maureen, it would be insulting if you didn't accept it. And so I took the man's watch and his words, and I deliver them to you again this Christmas Day. There is so much love in the world. We are programmed to love each other. Beneath all of the warring, there is love. Incredible, impeccable love. Why did he want me to say that to you? Why did he give me his watch for a few rolls of film? I personally can't put end to war. I can't. I know that I can't. But I know that together we could begin to put an end to war. But we will not have peace that is proclaimed by popes or presidents. We just won't. That day will never come. It's been established. We've had enough years of knowing that, right? That priests and popes and politicians are not invested in peace. So the end of war will need to come the way that it arrived that night when 2 men walked to no man's land in the name of peace. I think it's really interesting that they call this section of the battlefield no man's land. And that this is interesting because the path to war is so well worn. We're all rushing to war. We know how to take each other down and pull each other out. But the path to peace is called no man's land. Beyond our ideas of right or wrong, Rumi says that there is a field, and he invites us to meet him there. I think of this field as Bethlehem, the birthplace of innocence, where there is no right or no wrong, where every soul is welcomed. And in Rumi's poem, he says, our souls lie down in the grass, and the world is too full to talk about. And I imagine that the world that night, amongst those men, trading cigarettes and playing soccer, was so full. Can you imagine the fullness and the wonder of that night? As we prepare ourselves for Christmas, for Christ Mass, will we be brave enough to call a truce, a sincere truce on all those who seem to be enemies, a truce in any way that we might be attacking each other or attacking ourselves? Could we stand together, Christ and I, in peace and certainty of purpose? And in him is his creator, and so the creator is also in me, and so the creator is also in you, and we are here to create. Can we take a moment to really look into our mother's eyes as she gazes at you and affirms your perfection? In A Course in Miracles, it says our oneness with Christ is established beyond the reaches of time and wholly free of every law. We have no self except the Christ light. We have no purpose except to extend it. And thus are we made one with that Christ light. Are we able to accept that today? Can we bravely walk the way of peace? Can we develop the faith in our own innocence? Can we remember to go to Bethlehem? Meaning, remember when we talked about this in the beginning of the series, Bethlehem literally means a house of bread where we break bread and belong to each other, or a house of war. There's two interpretations to Bethlehem. And so are we ready to break bread and be an extension of love? O come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. O come ye to Bethlehem. And that's the word.
Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices, oh, night divine, oh, night when Christ was born, oh, night divine, oh, night divine. Truly he taught us to love one another. His law is love and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy in grateful chorus raise we, let all within us praise his holy name. Fall
Oh my gosh.
Beautiful, Kathy.
That was beautiful. I didn't know all those lyrics.
I know, aren't they perfect?
Yes.
Actually, I thought of a couple of perfect songs for your talk today. So thank God I have another song left to do.
Oh, good. Oh my God. What a gift, Kathy Richardson. Kathy, what the hell? You are the human jukebox. You pulled. God is so good. Oh, I'm just so blessed by you. I'm so freaking, you were amazing. Do you hear her voice? How do we, and you know what I was thinking the whole time you were singing? I was like, oh my gosh, my brain is being synchronized and harmonized because of this song, you know? I mean, that's it. Incredible to think that peace comes from songs, from music, you know? So you are priestess on high. I just genuflect to you.
Minister of Rock.
Amen. Yes, amen. Okay, well, thank you guys for joining us today. We have a few little announcements before we get to the conversation. I hope you do join us for the conversation. And the announcements are in regards to finances, like God bless us. We jumped through, you know, the change in our community, and we're doing okay, you know, and it's because of you and it's because of your generous donations, which are tax deductible. If you'd like to give some more today, we'd be most open to receive them so that we can continue our conversations and continue to do good work in the world, which is part of our mission statement. And if you want to be involved in helping add your voice to our community, there are 1,000 different ways to do it. You can find them at the website. Joni will tell you about that. Here are 3 ways that I would like to personally invite you. One is Miracles Live 365. It's a morning call that many of us get on every single day and help erode the ego, erode the blocks to love. And it's a spectacular journey through the workbook of A Course in Miracles. If you've ever heard of that or if ever been interested, it's a stunning way to wake up. If not this year, when? You know what I mean? Like, I've been doing it for 9 years and pretty much credit everything in my life to the practice of these principles in all of my affairs. So I invite you to join me. Check out Miracles Live 365. The other thing I wanted to share with you was VoiceBox. Kathy Richardson and I had a baby about 9 years ago called VoiceBox, where we help people to find their voice, and then she serenades you. What the hell? I mean, how can that be so awesome? It's like a freaking, like, it's Bethlehem, man. It's the best version of Bethlehem. So we have a sponsorship. If you want to sponsor a show, if you want your brand to be out there connected with an audacious moment, if you want to create an opportunity to support artists and to help people find their voice as well, you can go ahead and reach out to me and I'll tell you about the sponsorship where your name, brand, and your logo will be mentioned in the show and on our website. So that's a really cool thing that just developed recently. Finally, Maiden Voyage is a program that we are moving through as a community to help women to unearth the conversation from the divine feminine perspective. And I'm most excited about this journey that we're taking, facilitated by myself and Beth Gordon and Reverend Patricia Lewis and a few of the other amazing mavens and mothers of our community, a few of the other queens of our community. So it's something to consider. 2021. Those are the things I wanted to share personally, and pass it to Joni, who's going to tell you how to get connected to our signing up for those programs.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. I'm going to put in there the SpeakEasy Community website, where if you go there, there is a calendar on the top right. And when you go to the calendar, you'll see by the day all the opportunities that are offered to you. You can click on them and then you can sign up for them. When you sign up for them, you'll get emails, you'll get text reminders, which reminds me that today we have coming this afternoon, the Enneagram class. And I'm going to put that in. You can sign up for that. It's free, donations accepted. And then also coming up Saturday will be, in particular, is the work with Elizabeth Keats. And then all of these again are on our website in the calendar. Please give if your soul is nourished as I have. Anything that you can give today through the donation, I will put that link up again, and I appreciate it. I appreciate this community, and because we're all here, it just makes the dream work. Thank you.
Teamwork makes the dream work. And we'll pass it over to Kathy Richardson to rock our world one more time before we get the conversation going.
Thanks, and thanks for all the comments, everybody. Thank you. Yeah, I worry about hitting the high notes too sometimes, especially in the morning, especially on Sunday morning. All right. Thank God this is in a low key. So this is Christmas, and what have you done? Another year over, and a new one just begun. And so this is Christmas, I hope you have fun. The near and the dear ones, the old and the young. A very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Let's hope it's a good one without any fear. And so this is Christmas, the weak and for the strong, the rich and the poor ones. The road is so long, and so happy Christmas for black and for white, the yellow and red ones. Let's stop all the fight. A very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Let's hope it's a good one without any fear. And so this is Christmas. What have we done?